Welcome back. You're watching Alastair, Stewart and Friends here on GB News. Now, plans to ensure that people with Down syndrome get lifelong care have passed the first hurdle on the way to being law in England. The former Defence Secretary, Dr Liam Fox MP, who is former Cabinet Minister, used his private member's bill to introduce the legislation and has really championed the issue. The bill has government support and therefore is likely to become law. Campaigners say the bill is more necessary now than ever because people with Down syndrome are starting to outlive their parents. I am genuinely delighted, because I've been so excited by this story over the last 72 hours, to be joined here in the studio by Ken Ross, who is the founding officer of the Down Syndrome Policy Group. First and foremost, because we were chatting about it just while we settled in and what have you, Liam Fox was not necessarily the obvious candidate to lead the fight, and to be able to persuade an MP to use his private member's bill slot with his seniority is phenomenal and crucial to your success. Why was Liam involved?
Well, so you're absolutely right. I mean, the chance of someone having a private member's bill is pretty rare. He was on the front benches for so long, so he actually there's probably a tiny piece of time in history that he could have really have come out of the ballot and coming out in a position where his bill would have an opportunity to be read on a sitting Friday as the first matter of business was incredible. I believe he was approached by nearly 3,000 organisations to use his private member's bill. But from speaking to Liam, he has an assistant called Annabelle Toole. Her son Freddie was on one of the photographs just now. Who's 22. Liam knows Freddie really well. Liam also grew up next to someone who has Down syndrome. And one of the things when you once you know people with Down syndrome, you're involved with people with Down syndrome, you can start to think, well, actually, why am I not seeing more of you? Where are you? Where are you at school? Where are you in the workplace? All of those questions come to light, and they probably nag at people for periods of time.
Playing devil's advocate, though, and you know perfectly well, I'm totally on side, but how is it in the 21st century that we need a bill like this to be passed to enshrine the rights of just another group of people who happen to have a chromosomal difference from other people? I mean, that is extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to say that there's legislation which should protect everyone. Yeah. And when you say protect, it's actually thinking about how do you include people. Yeah. Well, people with Down syndrome have very specific learning profiles. They have a very specific set of needs, which unfortunately just aren't catered for with generic laws. And every time someone says, no, we already have these laws, well, actually, when you look at the end product, with 6% of people with learning disabilities actually being in employment, which is an NHS digital figure, it doesn't matter what policies people think we've got. If they think they work, they clearly don't, because only 6% of people actually have a job. And personally, I think that's absolutely outrageous, because what are people meant to do? If you're never allowed to have a job, what are you meant to do for most of your life, where most of us are at work for most of our lives? And it's something which, it needs to happen. It can't just happen in the workplace. Sure. It has to happen before then.
But then the real progress has tended to be made by very specific groups of people, like the acting fraternity, for example, one or two standout examples of brilliant people who have Down syndrome but act and play fantastic roles and what have you. I gather such was the feeling within the group that you had a little bit of a celebration when this passed through. You're rubbing your forehead. Is it still rolling on the morning after the night before?
Yeah, it was fabulous. And seeing actors like Tommy Jessup, and I've been privileged to make a film with Tommy Jessup in a lead role. And again, it was a film where it showed someone with Down syndrome in a really powerful position. In a very assertive role, because too many roles, and it's great that there are roles because it raises visibility, but too many roles are pity roles, and that's the old cliche. We don't want that anymore. People with Down syndrome, they're not needy. As Liam said, this isn't about charity. This is about having a piece of legislation that will actually allow people to live their own lives, because at the moment they're hamstrung from doing that.
Yeah, you and your wife drafted this bill, didn't you?
We did. We wrote the first draft, and we're very, very pleased with how it's ended up. I mean, to go from first draft in June to where we are now, it has been a roller coaster. I mean, the last 6 months have been non-stop. Having someone like Liam Fox with his seniority to work with all the different departments of government, because the bill, although it's very simple, it goes across all areas of government, and that's what makes it quite tricky.
And we should remind folk at home, you know perfectly well, as indeed do I, that it's still a lottery. So it was chance. Maybe there were other forces at play that let Liam's name come out of the lottery, quite literally, and then for Liam to decide, OK, I've got the slot, this is what I'm going to do about it. I mean, it is chance. It's
chance. And, when someone has the chance to introduce a private member's bill, again, someone who's so senior, they really want it to work. If he'd been, I still think, if he was a new intake of MPs, he'd probably be dealing with some government business on this, which was primarily government business. But Liam really wanted to raise this cause, and the amount of work he's done and his team, David Goss, who's based in Parliament for Liam, it's just work. I mean, I'm in awe as to how hard these guys have worked in terms of shaping it, getting involved with all the different departments.
So refreshing when you see Parliament working well and doing what so many people out there want. But the other thing that strikes me about this, and thinking long and hard, my big brother, who is now in his 70s, one of his best friends, had a sibling who had Down syndrome. And that's a long, long time ago. And as a family, they worked with that challenge, and it became wonderfully rewarding all the way through. But in those days, it was not uncommon, and perhaps it still is, for folk to have all of the tests that are available. And if that test shows that the embryo does have Down syndrome, then termination was still an option for very many people. That's tough, and it's not for me to judge people, and I wouldn't dream of doing that. But do you feel we've moved on from that? Or is that still a challenge?
Well, I think it's still a challenge. So a big part of the bill as well around creating legislation is about creating awareness. And the National Down Syndrome Policy Group, who have 5 adult members with Down syndrome who've been involved in every meeting, every week since May in trying to form and shape this piece of legislation, are really saying that, here are some guys, they're very capable. When you're working with health professionals who don't maybe have any direct lived experience of someone with Down syndrome, and they're, again, working off quite an outdated script, they may not be using the language, or they may not have the expectations that families would have. So one of the things we're hoping that this bill will do is actually just improve awareness, improve empathy, and give people a much better understanding around what Down syndrome is.
And again, to be clear to folk at home, who many of them will know exactly how Parliament works, but others perhaps may not, this bill will become an Act of Parliament for that crucial reason that Her Majesty's government have said we will back it. I mean, there's an awful lot of private members' bills that are passed through first reading to make a point, and there's nothing wrong with that, but then they rest on the shelf and gather up. The minute ministers said, yeah, we're with you, Liam, absolutely fundamental. This will be law within probably about a year?
Well, no, actually, we're hoping this will become law by the 21st of March 2022.
Right.
So it's a very so it must become law within this parliamentary session. With Gillian Keegan, I was in the House yesterday when the bill was nodded through, and to see the minister wave to me in the gallery, wave to my family in the gallery, see MPs from across the political spectrum wave to us, give us the thumbs up, big smile, it's extraordinary. The APPG, which was set up just ahead of Liam taking on this cause.
All-party parliamentary group.
Yes, sorry, all-party parliamentary group for Down syndrome.
No, I would only butt in because, that was one of the standout points of Liam Fox's Twitter campaign as well. He was standing there with Down syndrome people, but also Labour politicians, Liberal Democrat politicians, SNP politicians.
That's it, Plaid politicians, Scottish National Party politicians. We've got 7 political parties, SDLP politician, 7 political parties in the APPG for Down syndrome. You've got incredible advocates like Ian Paisley Jr., who is going to make it a personal mission to make sure this gets adopted.
It is quite extraordinary. My warmest congratulations. The only final question that crosses my mind, given the level of success that you and your wife have had, what are you going to do next?
Well,
You'll have people queuing up to lobby you to be lobbying people on their behalf.
I know, but we have three sons. My wife Rachel and I. We have our youngest son Max, who's 17, has Down syndrome.
Yeah,
and just he's been inspirational for me. He's been absolutely changed our life, changed the way we do business, think about business, and think about how everyone fits into society. And coming together with an incredible bunch of people in the National Down Syndrome Policy Group, they're people who, it's not about rearranging the deck chairs. This isn't about making people feel comfortable or have something convenient. This is about creating a policy and creating an expectation in life that people with Down syndrome should be included everywhere. Having someone like Liam Fox on board, all his energy, having the government as well, for the UK, for Great Britain, this is a world first. This is something we hope will be replicated around the world, and the success that we've seen over here and the powerful message that MPs gave out yesterday in the chamber, saying that everyone must give regard to this legislation. There is no government department will be able to say we didn't know that we had to do this. They must give proper regard to people with Down syndrome now. So we are so excited about the future.
You're entitled to be so. It is a phenomenal achievement, and I'm absolutely delighted to be able to discuss it with you, Ken. My best wishes to you and your family, Max particularly. And go on, hold it up.
Thank you.
There
sorry,
it is. We rehearsed this. It's on camera. No, keep it there,
sorry,
Ken.
Keep it there. Sorry.
Milk the moment.
Yes. National Down
and if you, and I'm talking now just to hold it there, if you want to see a little bit more background on it and whether your MP was one of those brilliant men and women who backed it, then go on to Twitter and look at Liam Fox's Twitter account, because it goes on and on and on, not in a boring way, quite the opposite, in an uplifting and reassuring way. So there we are. Warmest congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Tell you what, let's make a mental booking. We'll talk again in the spring, because it's how it unfolds. And as you rightly said about how other government departments react to it, not least Department for Education, and I'm sure Nadine will be on side for that as well. But let's talk again.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you very much, Alastair.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. That's Ken Ross there, the founding officer of the Down Syndrome Policy Group. We let it go for quite a while. That's our decision, because it's a good story. Not only a good story about folk who have Down syndrome, but about how ordinary people like him and his missus, on behalf of Max and their other children, can get things done when there are good politicians like Liam Fox around to help them. So let's have a hurrah for the good guys, whilst we still look at the bad guys occasionally and report in detail upon them too.